Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Amateur Experts Podcast, where we are experts about absolutely nothing. And then, as you know, host Landon Oliver here with my co host, Andrew Scott.
Yes, sir. Let's go. Let's go.
And so, busy weekend, especially for you.
Oh, man.
Busy weekend for me, though. Busy weekend in sports in general. This is Man, what a time to be alive.
Man. Yes, indeed.
So, I mean, I'll look. We can like we can carry this on and we can be all excited and happy for like the next 15 minutes before we even talk because that's pretty much what we've been doing before we hit the record button. But let's just go ahead and get right into it.
Yes, sir. Let's
So
do
there's
it.
a guy on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, you know. But if you don't, he's wearing a nice big Redbirds jersey and a nice big SL on his helmet. And I don't think that was there, a few days ago. So what changed?
Yeah, and it's technically still not there as of the moment we're recording. But in theory, the best third baseman in baseball, Nolan Arenado, has been traded to the St. Louis Cardinals. The last update that I saw was as of like 7 o'clock tonight. Since he does have a no trade clause, he sent in his form saying, he providing written consent to be traded. So he's accepted the trade on his end. They're basically still trying to work out the minute details of it. The only confirmed piece from the Cardinals is left-handed pitcher Austin Gomber, who's probably going to be the biggest piece based off what we've seen from the initial reports. But and I love Gomber. I'm a huge Austin Gomber fan. I've been pounding the table for him to get a chance to be a consistent piece of the rotation, and was hoping that this year was going to be the year. But as much as I love Gomber,
But
if that's the cost to get Arenado, and if that's the biggest piece, like if they're making it out of this deal without giving up Liberatore, Nolan Gorman, Zach Thompson, no top, really, like, no. I think the number 9 prospect, Jan Torres, was the
mhm.
outfielder, was the biggest prospect that's even been rumored to be a piece of this. So if you're making it out, getting Arenado with this deal, and that's the
What
biggest
up?
piece,
They
is that
didn't just
you're
get Arenado either. They're giving us $50 million
well,
as well.
and that's
But I
the
mean,
other piece of the deal that they're saying they're still really talking about, because I think the Rockies are trying their best not to give up that much money. Um, but yeah, that's a big possibility of it too. So essentially, the first reported deal was Nolan Arenado and 50 million for Austin Gomber, Jan Torres, Jake Woodford, first baseman Lucan Baker, who I think is like their 25th prospect or something like that, and then um, possibly Rondon, some other, there's been a bunch of names thrown around and things like that. But essentially, Austin Gomber, Jan Torres, and a bunch of guys that they're not going to lose sleep over. And even though Torres might be a solid player, whenever you're talking about prospects and outfielders, like, we've already have more outfielders than we know what to do with anyway. So they're dealing from a position of strength. So that even that's not really that big of a deal. Um, but they said they expect the deal to be done by tomorrow. So I don't see it not
yeah,
happening. It's just the
that's
details
that's what
getting
I read.
done.
They're basically like once he waived that clause tonight, it's basically just like a foregone conclusion that this should get done in the next day or so.
Yeah.
Um,
So now that the details are out of the way, we can have some fun with this.
Man,
So I don't think I've stopped reading about Nolan Arenado and watching Nolan Arenado highlights since this hit.
that's the first thing I did as soon as I got the
Yeah,
notification is
yeah.
I pulled up like MLB Network and YouTube, and Emily's sitting there like watching me. She's like, "Why are you so like?" She's like, "I don't get it," because I mean, not necessarily like she doesn't get it because um she tries to watch stuff with me and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think she understands like the magnitude of it. And she's like, "Why are you
Yeah.
watching YouTube highlights of baseball?" And I'm like, "Look, okay."
Like, so my wife, the reason that she got it, I had to explain it to her this way. So Nolan Arenado has been my second favorite non-Cardinal in the league for probably like the last 6, 7 years, behind only Mike Trout. And so every Cardinals game that me and my wife go to, we either sit we sit on the first level, either behind home plate or behind the Cardinals dugout. And literally the only time I don't get tickets in one of those spots is whenever the Rockies would come to town. I would always get tickets on the third baseline to be able to watch Arenado up close and personal do what he does. And so whenever the trade broke and I was all excited, I was like, baby, this is the guy that always make us sit on the opposite side of the field whenever he comes to town and we go to games. Like I think I've watched him in person maybe either 2 or 3 times now, and every time I've been field level behind the visitors dugout, which is the third base side, being able to watch him up close and personal. So it was just like, the Cardinals have been trying to make this happen for it seems like 3 years now.
I was gonna say, like,
And
it's been almost 2 or 3 years at this point that there's been discussions.
so whenever the rumors first started, I was like, here we go again, whatever. And then whenever I got that notification, I just was just kind of like speechless. It's insane, man. I mean, since he debuted in 2013, he leads all third basemen with 120 defensive runs saved. And then over that same time span, the Cardinals third basemen have combined for a -2 defensive runs saved.
Yeah.
So it's like just immediate improvement at a position that was a huge weakness, for the Cardinals since Arenado's been in the league. And I mean, he's been first in RBIs, first in extra base hits, first in total bases, second in home run, third in WAR since 2015. So then you're talking about on the offensive side, we're one of the probably the
Yeah,
worst
I was gonna
offensive
say I've
playoff
got
team in the league last year.
so you kind of touched on the DRS, but Arenado, he's driven in 647 runs in the past 6 years, which is the most in baseball. I think was it Abreu is second. Uh, so there's been two players since 2015 with 900 plus hits, 500 plus runs, and 500 plus RBIs
I believe they
in
both play for
baseball.
the Cardinals, right?
They both do. It's Goldschmidt and Arenado.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
man.
uh, and that's it. Like you said, you're just getting into the offensive side of the ball at this point. Like we're not
Yeah.
even talking about defensive.
Yeah.
So the defensive side of the ball, this automatically makes the infield like probably the best infield
Oh, there's no
without
probably.
without
Yeah.
no doubt in baseball.
Yeah, it
So
absolutely is.
so in the National League, there's been 10 platinum gloves that have been awarded to the National League.
Yep.
The Cardinals have eight of them, eight of
Yeah.
the 10 with now
Between
Nolan and
Yachty and
Yachty.
Arenado, yeah. And so for
So
those that aren't listening, Gold Glove. Somebody in each league from each position gets a Gold Glove. They give one Gold Glove award to each position, and then there's a Platinum Glove, which is one person from each league, regardless of position. The best defensive player in that league, regardless of position, gets that. And so it's been for 8 of the 10 of the years they've given that out. It's been either Yachty or Arenado, and then you've got Goldschmidt at first base, who's been a Gold Glove winner. You've got Tommy Edman, unless they, hopefully they bring Colton Wong back. But if they don't, you got Tommy Edman playing second, who he plays great defense regardless of where you put him on the field. You can literally put the dude at every position on the
yeah,
field, and he can
yeah.
field the position. DeYoung was a Gold Glove finalist at shortstop last year. You've got Arenado at third. We don't have to even talk about the greatness of Yachty behind the plate. You've got Dylan Carlson is a solid defensive outfielder. Harrison Bader, the only reason he's even on a MLB roster is because of how great his defense is. Tyler O'Neill was a Gold Glove winner last year. You're talking about an entire defense where there isn't a single hole on the field.
Yeah, and most of and like and not even not only is there not a hole on the field on the whole defense, but I mean you're talking about being having a few of the best players in the whole league, just in general at those defensive.
Yo, it's
Yep,
official.
we got it. I just got it too.
Yeah, it just broke live.
5-player trade. So
MLB and the Players Union approved St. Louis's acquisition of 5-time All-Star third baseman from Rockies in a 5-player trade. Okay, now where are the names?
All right, I'm looking at it right now. Let's see what we got here.
Got
Gomber just tweeted it.
Gomber, Montero, Loki, Gill, Summers. Okay.
Oh my god. Oh, holy shit. That's so fun. I'm so glad that broke on this podcast.
Oh my God, they absolutely stole. Great. I know. So one thing that we have to talk about with this is Nolan Arenado. He has an opt out after the 2021 season, up this season upcoming, and then one of the conditions in his contract was with him waiving his no trade clause. He now has an opt out after the 2022 season as well. So for the next 2 years, he could dip and be a free agent if he wanted to. So
But
some of this is built into that. But one great thing about him being traded to the Cardinals is he he's been over the last year. He's been texting an unnamed player. Most people think it's Yachty. Over the last year about how he would love to play in St. Louis and how he hopes he's a Cardinal one day and things like that. And he's whenever these rumors have surfaced in the past couple years, he's said multiple times that he would, without a doubt, waive his no trade clause to come to St. Louis. Like he wants to
he
be
wants to be
in
here.
St.
And then
Louis.
like you're not even taking into account like with the way the economy is right now and the money, like he's
Right.
got so much money left guaranteed on his deal that if he does opt out of that deal, who's to say he's making, upwards of 30 million per season for the next 6 years as well on top of that.
Yeah.
So not only do you have the money issue, but he wants to be here as well. So I think both those things compounded, I don't think dude's going anywhere.
No.
Especially, whenever we absolutely wreck the NL Central for the next, couple seasons at least. Um, depending on other, because all the other teams don't seem like they actually give a shit about winning right now.
No, they don't.
So, so yeah,
What a
this
time to be
is,
alive.
yeah, dude, this is insane. I'm so excited to see what goes down, and I can't wait for April 1st. Like
I can't wait
having
for them Arenado jerseys to hit the shelf. I'm ready to buy a new one. I've got my Yachty one on right now. I bought a Goldschmidt one as soon as that trade went through, and then them hit the shelf. And so as soon as whenever Arenado jerseys hit the shelf, the only question at that point is which style do I want to buy? Because
yeah. I'm
that's in the
thinking
bag.
the powder blues are
Yeah, the powder
gonna
blues
look
are that's
real
the best
nice.
jersey. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what my Yachty one is. So we kind of touched on there. There was what most people would consider two big concerns with this trade whenever it really surfaced that I really don't think are concerns. One we already touched on, which is the
the
opt
opt-outs,
outs,
and then the
and
second one
then
I'm guessing is the split after outside of
yeah.
cores.
So anytime you talk about a Rockies hitter, there's always, oh, well, they get to play half of their games at Coors Field, and that's always a concern. And the Cardinals have some experience at this point of trading with the Rockies. In the past we've gotten Larry Walker and Matt Holliday both from the Rockies, and both came over to St. Louis and performed extremely well, and were ended up being extremely great values in those trades.
Great
So
champions as well for the Cardinals.
right, yeah, and so, but those guys aside, if you look at Arenado's numbers, those concerns really kind of start to go away. I mean, whenever you look at from 2015 to 2019, Arenado slugged a 506 in road games and ranked fourth in baseball in extra base hits on road games. So no Coors Field in any of those numbers. Against the NL Central teams, just on the road. So the division he's going to be playing in now, only road games. He has an average of 292, an OBS of 349, a slugging percentage of 526, over 400 at bats, almost 400 at bats. So it's not like a small sample size we're talking about. And he's at his new home, he has slugged 511 and 90 career at bats at Busch Stadium. And if one last thing, before I get into another fun pool host stat, one last thing. From 2015 to 2019, Arenado averaged about one home run every almost 17 at bats on the road, just strictly on the road. So in a 600 at bat season, that would translate to 36 home runs. So, I'm not the least bit concerned.
No,
His home road splits are going
the
to look a
only
little bit
people that are
different now
bringing
to
up the
where.
core splits right now are Cardinals and Reds fans. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
don't think
so
there's anything to
let,
worry.
let's talk about some stats that don't where home and road don't matter. So Arnold has a 7.5% walk rate, a strikeout rate below 15%, and an isolated power rate over 240. So all those numbers have nothing to do with where you play. There's only one active player in baseball with those career numbers. You know who that guy is?
Well, I believe he probably plays for the Angels, but I think he used to play third baseman for the Cardinals.
Well, a little bit of third, mostly first, but yeah,
Oh yeah,
Mr. Albert Pujols, yeah. This is one other fun Pujols stat. Nolan Arenado in 2019. So 2020 was a little bit of a down year for Arenado. It was a pandemic season, and he had a shoulder injury that he tried to play through the entire year. So 2020, I don't expect his numbers to look like 2020 moving forward. But if you go back to 2019, Nolan Arenado was the first National League player since Mr. Albert Pujols to hit 40 or more home runs and strike out less than 100 times. And so, I mean, we're getting a guy that you're not supposed to get in the trade at all. Like
No,
teams aren't
these
supposed to want
guys
to
don't
trade this
become
guy,
available.
and they got him without having to give up any top
Yeah,
prospects,
they're
which makes
talking about
no
this.
sense.
One, I just want to say, like, I'm so like flustered and excited about this, especially now that the news officially just broke that I literally referred to Albert Pujols as a third baseman. So this is how like fucked up I am over this right now. So I've just got third base on my mind at this moment. Like that's all I
I,
can think of. So yeah, it's if you look on the internet right now, they're basically discussing like how Bill O'Brien infiltrated the Colorado Rockies front office and just decided like these guys don't get given away. Like, I mean, we're talking about for like top prospects, much less for like what the Cardinals gave up. This could possibly end up being the biggest lopsided trade in baseball history.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
it's up there. Yeah.
this is this is just an absolute.
And another great thing about this is after like a part of the trade, unless something changed once they made it official, in between that time. But whenever the trade was first announced, in principle, they said that Arenado was getting another year for 15 million added to the end of his contract. So, the Cardinals are, granted, he'll be 30, which is when most players start to you start to see the dip a little bit. Arenado is not a normal player, so I'm not concerned about the first few years that we have him under contract, but we are going to be we're also going to have the last few years most likely of his time in the MLB as well. Um, but the upside he brings you, and even a less than 100% Nolan Arenado is still better than Matt Carpenter at third base, both at the plate and in the field. The only thing that it'll be really interesting to see how they handle this situation is with Nolan Gorman. He's the Cardinals' number 2 prospect, I believe, who is expected to play third base and was expected to be ready to make his MLB debut possibly by 2022, 2023 at the latest. He's clearly not coming to the MLB to play third base at that point. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that situation now that this is official. Um, but I mean, and even looking at this from like we're talking about long term now, looking at this from the long term, like this obviously makes the Cardinals better right now. 2021, they are expected to be a playoff team. Obviously, they're expected to win the NL Central, and see where it goes from there. But um, I haven't seen anything on the numbers that the Rockies are going to send us in terms of cash, like if it still is 50 million or whatever the case may be. But if that ends up being the case, there's a decent chance that even with adding Arenado, the Cardinals payroll is going to be cheaper in 2021 than it was in
Yeah,
2020.
which could possibly give us the money. Maybe you give 12, 13 million to Wong. Maybe you
Hmm.
get Colton back. Maybe you move Edmonds. Out there to outfield and maybe left field, center field, somewhere like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just there's literally no weakness in this trade for the Cardinals. Like,
No, yeah,
there's nothing that they've done in this trade where you're like, well, man, I don't know. It's
yeah. There's
literally
no
you just look at
downside.
it and you're just like, yeah, okay, let's
And then
go.
looking forward after this 2021 season is up. Um, Look, I'm a huge Dexter Fowler fan. I've been trying to stick up for him for the last few years whenever fans really have been pounding on him in terms of his performance. Um, but even with saying that, his contract comes off the books after 2021. Andrew Miller and his $12 million comes off the books. Carlos Martinez possibly does. Matt Carpenter will only have a $2 million contract for 2020 or after 2021. I hope Wayno and Yachty aren't off the books because I never want them to be off the books. I want them to play until they're 90. But they're both. Wayno is officially back for 1 year. Yachty is expected to re-sign after he finishes up down in the Caribbean Series. For people are expecting to be 1 year deal, so it's a potential that those guys are off the books as well. And so the Cardinals aren't strapped for cash right now, and they won't be in the future. And so you've got kind of this perfect storm where they've got plenty of talent on the roster. a lot of cash that's about to come available after this season. And then you've got their number 2 prospect, Nolan Gorman, who was expected to make his debut in 2022. You've got their number 3 prospect, Matthew Liberatore, who was expected to make his debut in 2022. The number 4 prospect and likely Yachty replacement if Yachty isn't back in Ivan Herrera, the catcher who was expected to make his debut in 2022. The number 5 prospect, Zach Thompson, another left-handed pitcher, and a shout out for being a UK alumni as well. It was really cool to see that work out. He's expected to make his debut in 2022 too. So you've got this like incredible thing happening here where you've got stars on the roster, money available to sign free agents, and a bunch of young talent ready to come up and make their mark in the league. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited as a Cardinals fan right now.
Yeah. And I mean, like, so we can get excited. And I know we talked about this. I don't think this necessarily makes them World Series favorites because I mean, you still got the Padres, you still got the Dodgers. Like those teams aren't going anywhere. Like those rotations are disgusting. And I think if there's some areas the Cardinals could improve, definitely their rotation. I think definitely, maybe the end of the lineup that you kind of want them to maybe get another bat in there. We still don't really know what's going to happen with the DH spot as well. So I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I mean that's also a thing. But you also have Matt Carpenter that can step in at that point. As
Yeah,
far
and
as
I
like
mean it's still out there, like there's still a shot that there's a DH and
yeah, but I mean it's I don't see it happening this year. But I mean, it's definitely possible. So I mean, there's some questions on other parts of the roster that could definitely use some improvements, but by no means are they bad.
right.
Especially if some of the guys that they had a lot of guys last year that underperformed. Like
Hmm.
even if they just regression or positive, regression to the mean, and they just play average.
Right.
I mean, you're looking at by far and away. I hate saying the word lock for the NL Central because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, nothing's ever a
But
lock in the
nothing's
World
ever a
Series.
lock. But I
Yeah.
mean, they're by far the favorites. And
Mhm.
as we saw kind of with the Astros this last year, like the Astros, man, the Astros sucked ass. And once you get in the playoffs, anything's
Anything can
possible.
happen. Yeah.
So,
Only
I mean,
you kind of already alluded to it. The only real downside is that the Cardinals do play in the National League. And
yeah,
like I mean, in my opinion, if you look at the top 6 teams in baseball right now, 5 of the 6 of them are in the National League. I mean, you got the Yankees in the
I was going
American
to say,
League
like,
who
the
should
Yankees
be
would be the
there.
only
But
one that I would have
um,
considered.
I mean, outside of that, you've got the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets, the Braves, and the
And
Cardinals.
especially if the Mets, they're rumored for a pretty big trade themselves. So, I mean, if that comes through, that just strengthens them even more.
Yeah, I mean, if they end up
Um,
landing Trevor Bauer in
yeah,
free agency, I mean, so I mean, like I'm comfortable naming off those 5 NL teams before I get to the next best American League team, which in my opinion would probably be the White Sox or the Twins, however you want to go in that, in that debate. But yeah, I mean that's really the National League playoffs. Once we do get there, is going to be a fight to the death. It's going to be terrible to watch because as a Cardinals fan, I'm gonna like look baseball, basketball, and football are my 3 loves. I love each of those sports to the point to where it's hard to even say which one I love the most. But if I had to pick, baseball is my favorite sport. And of all my favorite teams, the Cardinals are the team I'm the most passionate about. They're the team I get most nervous watching. They're the team that just really the emotions of a sports fan, being a sports fan, come out the most whenever it comes to the Cardinals. So it's going to be agonizing watching the playoffs once they get here. Assuming that the Cardinals take care of business and get there. But man, it's going to make for some good TV with these matchups in the National League, though. So
yeah,
it's
I
going to
can't, I
be
can't wait. And then
a lot of fun.
hopefully, this coronavirus stuff kind of chills out too. So maybe they open up the ballparks and maybe we can make a podcast trip down to Bush Stadium.
If I'm not able to be at Busch for opening day this year to see Arenado, I'm gonna be really, really, really upset, man. And I'll be upset for him too, honestly, because
The fans like
opening
he
opening
deserves.
day opening day in St. Louis is not a normal baseball experience,
No,
man. And then whenever you've got a player of Arenado's caliber coming to town to make his home debut, like I don't even know how long the standing ovation is going to last for his first at bat. I really don't. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people didn't stop clapping until he, made it back to the dugout after he hits his first home run, on his first at bat. I mean, like, the fan, the city just cares and loves about this team so much, and they appreciate great baseball players,
Yeah,
and they
because
know them when
and
they
it's even
see them.
amplified the last few years because once that bitch ass Stan Kroenke took the Rams out to Los Angeles, like it's the only game you have in in that
Yeah,
area pretty much.
yeah.
And
It's the
unless you're a
Cardinals and the
Chiefs,
Blues.
I mean, unless you're a Chiefs guy, but even then, that's not really considered. That's more on the other side there of the river. Um, but yeah, I mean, you got the Blues, which I mean, the Blues, they're
Okay,
fantastic
the,
in
the
their own
city
right.
city loves them
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
man.
they're
And I mean, you,
fantastic in
and
their
you
own
saw
right.
you saw the support
Oh yeah,
for the
like
Battlehawks whenever the XFL came to
oh
town.
yeah,
The
man.
the Battlehawks were the St. Louis Battlehawks had the most season ticket sales of any team in the
Yeah.
XFL.
So
Their
how did
stadium was packed.
so
I
I don't know
mean,
if we've ever really talked about that. So what happens if what happens tomorrow if NFL comes out and they're like next year we've got an expansion. St. Louis is going to get a football an NFL franchise. Do you abandon the Rams just right then? You just jump on the St. Louis franchise, or are you playing Rams for life?
I I will support and love the St. Louis team as my second favorite team.
Oh wow!
But as much as I
Or it's
love
in
the
Los
city of
Angeles.
as much as I love the city of St. Louis, it's my favorite city in the world. A lot of people make fun of me for that because it's been like people call St. Louis boring and trashy, but I love the city, man. But I've been a Rams fan since I really began to understand what football was and what the NFL was. The Rams were the team that I really hooked on to. And granted, a large part of that was because they were in St. Louis at the time. Um, it was, I want to say like 1997 whenever I started watching football, and the Rams. It was nice timing because it was right before they won their first Super Bowl. I think it was the season before they won their first Super Bowl, or the second, 2 seasons before. Um,
Yeah, you didn't have to deal like me where you had
yeah, so
a
I
one in
it's just
15.
I pondered the thought of picking a new team and riding with somebody else whenever they did abandon St. Louis,
Hey man,
and
I know we had talks. You could have just came. We're like 300 miles away, man. Just come on
I,
over
I I
here.
couldn't do it, man. I looked through people's rosters and I looked at teams close to St. Louis, and I just couldn't imagine rooting and cheering and supporting another team after I supported the Rams for the entirety of my sports life, essentially. And I don't see that changing even if St. Louis gets a team. Now, St. Louis's team, I would root for every single game they're playing as long as they're not playing the Rams, and they would be basically 1B to the Rams 1A. But no, I'm stuck, man. I'm a Rams fan for life at this point. If I can survive the move back to LA, and if I can survive the Jeff Fisher era, if none of that stuff made me abandon the Rams, I never will.
Well, so again to the next look. We I know we had a pretty big discussion last podcast about a certain player that if
Are
the
we? Wait,
NFL
are
would
we
come
moving
out.
on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I brought up the
Okay.
Rams. I mean, we might as well
Well,
just kind of
let's
yeah,
do it then.
there we go. So,
Let's move on.
yeah. Uh it's funny that, I was hyping up Stafford so much last podcast and I just happened to do this podcast with a Rams fan. Uh because I was going to be so upset if he wasn't a Colt, and then this motherfucker's team just swoops in and offers their entire, uh, future to sneak him. But yeah, so like kind of we did with Arenado. Like I said, it's been a big week for you. I was excited about the Arenado trade. I'm not excited about this, so I'll let you kind of go ahead and take point on this one.
Yeah. So
I'm in mourning.
you alluded to the deal that was based. It was essentially Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff, 2 first round picks, being the 2022 first round pick and 2023 first round pick, because we don't have a 2021 first round pick because fuck first round picks, and a third round pick, which is from this year, which I think we have like 3 third round picks this year because we have comp picks from guys leaving free agency and things like that. So um, I was even after seeing what the Rams gave up, I'm ecstatic. The Rams somehow got rid of the worst contract in the NFL right now.
I don't think it's the worst in the NFL. I think Wentz's contract is worse.
Okay, there, yeah, he has a bigger cap hit if he gets traded, so I guess that's fair. But
Well, that and I think at this point, like in like a weird fucked up way, I think Goff actually like might be better than Wentz. I don't think that's weird to say,
yeah,
but I would
watching
I
him for
would
as many
like
years
if
as
Jared
that.
Goff came to my team, like if they got traded to the Colts tomorrow, I would be like, I mean, we can, we'll see what happens. I would just expect average play.
Enjoy your playoff visit for the first round and then a
Yeah,
first round exit,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah. But see, like
Um,
if we traded for Carson Wentz, I don't think we would make the playoffs. So
yes, yeah,
I,
we're on opposite ends of the
yeah,
spectrum on
I
that one.
just I don't that's what I'm praying for. But anyway, let's get back to this deal. This deal
Um,
actually happened. We're not dealing in hypotheticals here.
so a lot of people were really shocked, like, oh my God, they gave up 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick for Stafford. And a lot of what came down to it, a lot of it was, there. Whenever you start talking about dealing future first-round picks that aren't for the upcoming draft, those first-round picks get devalued a little bit whenever they're farther out. Um, so the fact that the Lions took a deal where they weren't getting a 2021 first-round pick, that didn't help the Rams' case to make them have to overpay a little bit for in most people's eyes. And then the fact that they were asking the Lions to take on Jared Goff's contract was another thing to
So
where,
see, this is where we differ in that though, because I don't necessarily think that they like. I don't think it's necessarily Jared Goff is just like a throw in this. I think the Lions actually kind of wanted Jared Goff. Like I said, I just get this weird feeling with Goff, like, and we talked about this earlier, just kind of in conversation, but it's hard to be somewhere where you're not wanted. And he wasn't drafted by McVay. McVay was kind of stuck on him, or McVay was stuck with him, should I say. And even then, they made the playoffs and they made the Super Bowl, and we saw what happened with that. But at the same time, I mean, he, he's not a very good fit in McVay's offense, like to go along with the bootlegs, the outs, stuff like that. But as far as a pure pocket passer, I mean, I'm not saying he's got the strongest arm in the league, but he can make every throw you can possibly make. I think this is where this is a perfect example of now we're going to get to see the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And this is what we've been talking about for years with quarterbacks. And it's, does situation honestly make the biggest difference in their careers? Because you have Matthew Stafford. A lot of people forget this. Matthew Stafford, yeah, he was the number one overall pick, but he didn't come into, he's never not had decent weapons. Now, his offensive lines the past few years and maybe early in his career weren't that great. He's never had a good runner. He's never had 1,000-yard rusher. But you could say the same thing for Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck never had 1,000-yard rusher. He never had a good offensive line up until his last year, whenever he retired, and he still drugged those shitty teams to 11 wins. But I don't think anybody's going to compare. Obviously, you're not going to compare Matthew Stafford to Andrew Luck, but they're both number one overall picks, and people are now considering Matthew Stafford like that. He's just going to make this stratosphere jump with McVay into being this top, borderline top 6, 7 quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think it's just so cut and dry. I don't think it's necessarily like you move Goff, you put Stafford in, and then Stafford's going to make this meteoric rise from, the 15th, best quarterback into like the top 6. And I think he's, like we said earlier, I really like this move for them. I think Stafford is, for me, he's about 10 to 15 range. I think at at the very best, you might be getting, that 9, 10 best quarterback in the league. And at that point, with the roster the Rams have, if they stay healthy, if they play like they did in 2020, you can win a Super Bowl with that. I don't think there's any question. But, you know, we'll see what happens. I think Goff might be better suited for Detroit and what they're doing. If he does end up playing well, they've got a plethora of picks now that they can surround him. He's still really young. And if he doesn't play well, they can get out of that contract in a year or two.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not really much of a risk there for the Lions. And as far as the picks go, we all know how the NFL goes. Houston made this same trade 2 years ago. They're 12-4. They're one of the favorites in the playoffs. They're up on Kansas City, what, 28 to nothing in the second half, they traded 2 first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil to secure that offensive line and build around Deshaun. And a year and a half later, look at where we're at. They just gave Miami the number 3 overall pick. Now, I don't think, unless they have just this meteoric thing of injuries like San Francisco had, I don't think Los Angeles by any means is going to do what Houston did um, because we kind of see, Bill O'Brien trading the picks and the roster, and there was just a number of different things that went wrong there that I don't think is going to happen to the Rams. But first round picks, we can't just pencil these in as like, oh, well, they're going to be picking, 27th, 28th. The fact is like a year in the NFL is eternity. You don't know what's going to happen. So could these be top 15 picks? Could these be top 10 picks? It's not in the realm of possibility. You never know with the NFL. And the Rams, they've got their top 6 guys are accounting for $109 million of their cap. That's almost their entire cap. So you've got 6 dudes, and then you've got what, 47 other spots on that roster that you've got to fill out now with these mid-level guys and mid-level picks. And you could also be losing some guys in free agency. And you're setting yourself up for, if something does happen to Stafford, if something does happen to Donald or Ramsey, just 1 or 2 injuries at key spots of one of these 6 guys, that can derail your whole season. So this is going to be very interesting to watch. I'm really excited about it. Like, I know, like, I'm sitting here and like I'm playing devil's advocate basically, but I am really excited about this because now we get to watch. So was it the Lions holding Stafford back all this time? Like I said, he had Calvin Johnson, he had Kenny Galladay, he's got Hawkinson, he's had some pretty decent weapons throughout the years to play around with, and they just haven't translated the wins. Now their defense,
I
obviously we
don't
know their
I don't
defense
think
is
having one
terrible.
good wide receiver
Well,
and
I
then
mean,
a
that's what I'm
couple.
saying. it's not been
Like
one good wide receiver. He's had some good weapons.
whenever he had Calvin Johnson, he didn't have Kenny Galladay, and whenever he had Kenny Galladay,
No,
he didn't
no,
have Calvin
I'm not
Johnson.
saying he's
And
had them. I'm not saying he's had them all at once. I'm just
I would
saying like
still
there's
even
been.
even with those good names, the playmakers around him were still, as a whole, were below average compared to a lot of teams in the league, I would
Yeah, I
think.
mean, like I said, but we've seen these quarterbacks that, um, if they're as heralded as now what the media and some of these fans are now hyping up Stafford as, like I said, they're talking about him like coming in and just having this renaissance and just becoming this, huge quarterback. And if he's anything what they're saying that he's going to be now with McVay, he should have at least been able to carry
Well, and
the
you
load a
can't
little
pay
bit
too much
there.
attention to what, like, the Monday through Friday early morning ESPN and Fox Sports
Oh no,
shows
no, I'm
say,
not necessarily talking about those. I
because
mein those guys, like, we know that they're just
that's
there for
just
clicks.
they're in the
Yeah,
clickbait
they're
business,
in the
man. They
click.
don't care
Yeah,
about
yeah,
being
we know
right.
that. But I mean, just in general, like there's a lot of fans, and I'm as big of a Matthew Stafford fan as you're gonna like I said, you can listen to the last podcast, and me and Drew have talked about this now. He's known this for years. Like, I've been on the Matthew Stafford train of like the dude is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. So now we actually get to see, you know, was it them holding him back, or is he just gonna, is he gonna fall flat on his face? Because at the end of the day, man, like, people can make excuses and you can say like, oh well, his defense wasn't that good. Oh, he didn't have these weapons and stuff. But now he's not gonna have that excuse.
No,
So,
yeah, no more
um,
excuses.
so yeah, this is basically, I I know you've kind of said like, by the time this is over with, because even if it is just a couple years, they've got their first round picks, after a couple years, and they can just draft whoever. But at that point, you've got guys that are aging. Donald's going to be 30. Cup's what, 28. Woods is 29. They're going to be pushing into their early 30s at that point. Ramsey's going to be right around that 30-year-old range, or late 20s, somewhere around there. Which, I mean, I think he's still got a couple good years, but for, I mean, by good years, I mean like he's got like 2 or 3 years as like the best cornerback in football. I don't mean good years. I mean elite years. Um, obviously, Whitworth's his contract's going to expire, and then you're in a market for a left tackle. The inside of their offensive line, I think, is all free agents this year.
Mhm.
They're not.
No, one of them is, but
One of them is
yeah.
okay. I didn't.
Um,
I didn't know if it was this year or the next year, but I know the inside of their offensive line is coming up that they could
mhm.
possibly lose. I
Yeah,
know
there's going to be an
Johnson.
entire offensive line retool here in the
Yeah,
next couple
and
years.
that's the one thing a guy like Stafford needs. It's something that he hasn't necessarily had. He's had some good centers, and some pretty decent guards, but his tackles notoriously has been just turnstiles for his entire career. So I think having a guy like Whitworth, if he doesn't regress, this coming up season, I think it's that's going to be a godsend for him. I think you try to mitigate the pressure, which they did with Goff, which, like I said, it wasn't that necessarily good of a fit for McVay's offense. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Goff might do um, in Detroit and seeing how they kind of retool that offense. I am extremely excited to own DeAndre Swift shares because they're going to have to run the dog shit out of that ball. But you can mitigate that inside pressure within the McVay offense because you have these rollouts and um, they run the ball really well. He's going to have Cam Akers back there. There's not going to be any excuses anymore for Matthew Stafford. And with the Rams, this is Super Bowl or bust. Like, if you don't win a Super Bowl, and this is just me saying this, I know you're going to disagree, but um, it's Super Bowl or bust. If they do not win a Super Bowl, they've gone 7 years now without a first round pick. And the cost of getting Goff and then trading Goff has now equaled 4 first rounders, 2 second rounders, and 2 third round picks. And I think people use this as a bad thing. I don't use this as a bad thing. I think this is what most teams should do is if you know a guy is not the guy, just cut bait. And I think so many people are scared to do that. And I think what the Rams did is smart. They knew Goff wasn't their guy. They knew Goff wasn't going to fit their offense. They knew he, wasn't going to get them, even though he's been to a Super Bowl. And I think he played really well, not necessarily in the Super Bowl, but I think that year he had a really good year. But they didn't believe that he was the guy that's going to get him over the edge. And instead of, holding on to that contract and saying, like, well, we signed him, we've got all of these picks invested, we've got all this investments, you just cut your losses and you move on to the next guy and you try to mitigate the risk with it. And I think the Rams are really smart. This is this is just we're in uncharted territory. Like, as far as teams giving up like all these picks and first round picks, they've gone so many years now without a first, and we're gonna see if it's gonna pay off, with a Super Bowl, or if now they've just basically mortgaged all their young guys because all their key players, while they're still in their late 20s, maybe around 30 years old now, in a few years, that's not going to be the case. And you're not going to have these young guys that are coming up and already developed and ready, kind of like the Cardinals, where you got these guys here in a couple of years that are ready to take, jump right in and take the spot of these older, elite veteran guys. So, it's going to be interesting. I'm super excited to watch this. I'm so excited for Matt. I'm glad he's out of Detroit. I'm glad he's went to a franchise that's willing to take the risk like that. And I just, for his sake, I hope he stays healthy. I hope he's able to, win games and kind of get that monkey off his back. And I will definitely be rooting for Matthew Stafford and the Rams next season. So that kind of concludes my monologue and my thoughts. I've got some other stuff that I'll touch on as far as, you get into advanced statistics. And like I said, I'm just kind of trying to play devil's advocate here because we just spent the entire first half of this podcast gushing over the same dude. And I know you're about to gush over him. So we can't just spend the entire podcast just like, salt and pepper, sucking off, these quarterbacks and everybody like us. We need to play devil's advocate somewhere. So I'll,
I
I'll,
get that you have to do that.
I'll let you go now. So
Having a Rams fan on, yeah, I can't. It's a podcast. I want to try to be professional. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to interrupt you during that,
I know. Hey, look,
but I know it's best that I'll let you do your thing, and then I'll come in and do my thing. And
you're just
there's
trying to
been
give people different perspectives here.
right. So you made a lot of valid points, most of which I have differentiating opinions with that I'm going to try to remember to touch on. The first one being Goff being able to do everything that you need him to do as a quarterback. Do not agree. Goff might have a decently strong arm. I
I'm
don't
not
think he's
saying
very
no, I
good.
wasn't saying that. I'm just saying like as far as like he can make all the throws like as far as his arm goes. Like he doesn't have a weak arm. I think
I
he
didn't,
still
but
has
I don't
issues.
think he can throw the deep ball.
Um
I've
yeah,
watched him enough and watched McVay draw up plays where he's thrown successful deep passes. Not that he
right.
completely
Well, you're
can't
an
always
NFL
do it.
quarterback, you're gonna hit them
Yeah,
occasionally.
but for McVay's offense, he wants to take the shot constantly, and you saw it immediately whenever Goff got hurt and Wolford came in. Even with Wolford, McVay opened up the playbook more to where I'm pretty sure Wolford threw more passes, what was considered deep passes in just that one regular season game than Goff damn near through the entire year up to that point. Um, so that you to your point with fitting in McVay's system, McVay needs a guy to where you don't have to be mobile. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson mobile, but you
No.
can't be a statue. You have to be able to move around, which moving around in the pocket, Stafford is great at. Um, and Stafford has an absolute cannon. So
Yeah, he's got one of the top five like biggest arms in football.
right, you're talking about Mahomes, you're talking about Josh Allen, um,
I'd put Lamar up there.
and but Stafford's in that group. So that was the first one. The big thing, and so I mean the quarterback position is the biggest, the most important position in football. And
As I know.
from 2017 to 2021, Stafford had, and these are PFF stats. So I love some of these. I love using some stuff I hate from Pro Football Focus, but these numbers is what PFF came up with. From 2017 to 2021, Stafford had 57 big time throws and 26 turnover worthy passes, compared to Goff having 44 big time throws and 45 turnover worthy passes. And that's in a better offensive system with better weapons during those years. And Goff turned the ball over 23 more times on 32 less pressures from 2017 to 2021. He had a better system, a better offensive line, better weapons, and still, I mean, just across the board. And as far as the biggest discussion that I've been seeing is the whole draft pick thing, right? The Rams haven't had a draft pick since they traded up and drafted Jared Goff in 2016. It's the last time they picked first, or that's the last time they had a first round pick. And now with this deal being in place, the next time they won't pick in the first round from 2017 to 2023, and I literally could not care less. I really couldn't. I mean, you alluded to the ages of like the core of the Rams. The guys are either 30 or approaching 30, and they have realized we have this window where we need to try to win. So instead of trying to trade up and draft a rookie, or just sticking with Goff and hey, let's just run it back next year and try our best. They realized that they needed to make a change, and they did so. And the biggest piece out of all these guys that are aging, Aaron Donald is, he either already is or is about to be 30 years old. And you cannot let one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history, in my opinion, already go through his career without winning a Super Bowl. You need to do everything you can to get that man a Super Bowl. And I watched the Rams try to build a team the traditional way through the draft. We're going to pick in the first round, and everything's going to be jolly. From 2005 to like 2016, whenever they made the Jared Goff pickup. So you're talking about like over a decade. I watched them go through this, and I can tell you as a Rams fan, these last 4 years have been a lot more fun than that decade was, and I don't regret any of the only first round pick I regret them trading is the second of the two first round picks they traded to trade up to get Jared Goff, because I hated that move. But outside of that, I mean, they traded their 2018 pick to get Brandon Cooks, who was great for us while he was here. It was the year we went to the Super Bowl. In 2019, they traded back with Atlanta to acquire more picks, which whenever you're picking in the back of the first round, I'm always a fan. If there's not a guy there that you just absolutely love, that you want to have that fifth year option, trade back, get more picks. I love that. 2020 and 2021 were for Jalen Ramsey, who has been nothing but incredible for the Rams. And then now you've got 2022 and 2023 with Matthew Stafford. Unless Stafford comes out and all of a sudden just isn't the quarterback that I think that he can be, I don't see any downside for that. And then you're talking about the first round picks, like, so we're talking about the picks that they've traded now. The 2017 first round pick that they traded to trade up to get Jared Goff, that was Corey Davis. In
Well, I mean
2018,
that's the Titans. I mean,
hang on. Yeah, that's the Titans, but I got more first round picks for you. Hang on. 2018 was Isaiah Wynn. 2019 was Caleb McGarry. Do you know Caleb McGarry?
unfortunately, I do
2020,
actually.
2020 was Kalavon Chehashian. I
Yeah,
don't even know how to say his
Jacksonville.
name right, much less know who
Kalavion
he is.
Chason. He's a
Um,
defensive end from LSU who plays for the Jaguars.
and we'll see how the rest of them play out. But like,
He's got some talent on it, man.
they're taking the approach of, instead of trying to hit on a first round pick, we're going to trade these first round picks for guys that have already hit, and we're going to acquire talent. And Stafford has 2 years left on his deal, so if things go sideways, by the time Stafford is off the books, they've got more picks. And if the cost of all these trades and everything is to have to try to retool the roster for a couple of years, as a Rams fan, I'm perfectly fine with that. Even if they don't win a Super Bowl, yeah, I want them to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, that's the main goal. That is the whole point of this trade. Literally, McVay was quoted that what was it? I'm trying to remember the exact quote. It was McVay's mindset during this trade was, we're worried about winning the Super Bowl, not about winning this trade. Like, we have no issue overpaying in the minds of the public, as long as we can win the Super Bowl. And that's what they think that this move means to them. Is he's not a top 3 quarterback, top 5 quarterback, but if the rest of the team around him is as good as they've been the last couple of years, Stafford essentially could be good enough in their eyes to win them a Super Bowl, which is all they care about. And if the cost of that is, hey, we got to have a few down years before we're back in contention, these last 4 years is the most fun I've had as a Rams fan since the greatest show on turf. And that was a long time ago. So, like, I'm okay with that. And, there's been a lot about, the Rams haven't had a first round pick in all these years, and they got none. The Rams were still the youngest team in the NFL last year, even without a first round pick. Then one credit to Les Snead and Sean McVay, since McVay's come aboard, and, um, and Jeff Fisher hasn't had any say on who the Rams get to draft. The Rams have continually hit on these mid-round picks. You're talking about Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round, John Johnson in the 3rd round, Taylor Rapp in the 2nd round, Cam Akers in the 2nd round, Jordan Fuller, who was one of the best rookie safeties in the league, in the 6th round, Darius Williams, who was one of the best come-up corners in the league this year, was an undrafted free agent. Granted, that's what they're going to have to do if they want this to be a success for the next couple of years, because they don't have first round picks. But the thing is, they've been doing it, and I don't have any reason to believe that they won't be able to do it. I mean, Pro Football Focus considered the Rams rookie class the 11th most effective rookie class in the league this year, and we didn't have a first round pick. I mean,
Hey,
so
you know who was number 2 in that?
what was it? The Colts?
Yeah, we
Hey,
didn't have a
good for you
first round
guys.
pick
Hey,
either because we
you got
traded it
hey,
for Buckner,
yeah, you
and I would
guys have
do
been
that trade 100 out of 100 times.
you guys have been killing it in the draft. But I mean, if the Rams achieve the success that they expect to achieve, they're going to be picking in like the 26 to 32 range in the first round for those picks. And you can have those. Terrible things can happen, injuries can happen. The Houston Texans situation could happen, and they could end up picking in the top 10 or whatever. And if that ends up being the case, I mean, that's going to suck. But you don't forecast injuries and try to predict, oh, this guy's definitely going to get hurt this year or anything like that. That's just not how you go about it. And I mean, Stafford has had a running back run for over 100 yards 11 times in his career. His entire career, he's had 11 games where a running back went over 100 yards. The Rams had that 4 times just last year.
Well, shit, I
It,
mean, if they would have
they've had,
got rid of Adrian Peterson and gave Swift the damn ball sometime, they might have done that last year.
he's never had a run game. He's never had the PFF had the Rams offensive line as the 3rd best offensive line in football. Granted, they could lose a couple pieces over the next couple of years on that, but um, he's got an upgrade in offensive line. He's got an upgrade at the running back position with Akers and with Darrell Henderson. I mean, that combo, they're going to go over 100 yards several times next year, I would think. Um, And just in terms of fit and scheme, Stafford has been one of the most efficient quarterbacks in play action over the last several years, but the Lions just don't do it. They were 21st in play action percentage last year, and the Rams were fifth. And they were 20th in percentage of plays with motion at or before the snap. The Rams were seventh. They were 24th in receiving yards after the catch. The Rams were second. And Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods over the last like 2 or 3 years are second and third in the league in yards after catch, only behind like Devontae Adams, I think. And so his receivers aren't helping him out after the catch like that. Now he's going to have these guys to where, granted, they're not going to have to do as much after the catch anymore because they have a better quarterback throwing them the ball. But you've got what Stafford brings, and then to that, what the Rams receivers are capable of after the catch. And the Lions were 21st in percentage of dropbacks with 7+ blockers. The Rams were number one in that last year. And so I mean, it's just in terms of he's not a top 5 quarterback, but in terms of him coming into a scheme that fits him better with an offensive minded head coach that's going to just be able to set him up for success and better weapons and a better running game and a better offensive line. And I mean, I think he's had a top 10 defense once in his career, and they went like 11-5 and made the playoffs that year. And even if the number one defense from last year regresses, they're not falling out of the top 10. And so he's going to have a top 10 defense again. And barring injury, it's really hard to see a way where this doesn't work out. Maybe they might not win. It's not guaranteed they're going to win a Super Bowl, but it's really tough to see a way where this just blows up. And with the front office's ability in the past to hit on these mid-round picks and bring in key free agents and get like Leonard Floyd was left for dead from the Bears last year. The Rams signed him to a 1-year deal, and whenever you put an edge rusher next to Aaron Donald, all of a sudden he's a great player and he has this career year, which
Weird
it's
how that happens.
Dante Fowler did it 2 years ago. The Rams traded for Dante Fowler from the Jaguars. He wasn't producing. He came over, had a great year. Atlanta paid him like 3 years, $50 million or whatever, like this crazy money. He did basically nothing this year. And then Leonard Floyd comes in on this 1-year deal and has a career year. He's probably going to go get paid buku some money by somebody. And then the Rams are going to go get another cheap edge rusher. And Aaron Donald is going to get triple teamed 30% of the time and double teamed 80% of the time. And that cheap edge rusher is going to look like one of the best pass rushers in the league. And I mean, it's just I'm not going to guarantee the Rams are going to win a Super Bowl by any means, but they 100% got closer to winning a Super Bowl. And
Agree.
as a Rams fan, I can appreciate the fact that they see that there's a window and that they're going after it and that they're not
Yeah,
staying complacent.
and that's just kind of the point too. Like, kind of that last little monologue I made that I wanted to make is like I wish more teams would kind of do this where they see that they have a win now window and then they're able to say like, you know what, like let's go all in for a year or two. Let's try to get this thing done. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least we're trying. And first round picks are like gold currency in the NFL for whatever reason. And I think that's just like the biggest load of shit probably in the league right now, is how these guys just want to hold on to these picks and covet all these picks because you still got to pick the great, the great player. Whoever you pick in the first round's not guaranteed to do. This is literally like somebody saying, like you said, like, you know what, we're going to take the risk out of our first round picks. We're going to go get guys that are established and we know have already hit, and that might, mortgage our future for a year or two down the line. But it's going to put us in a position, that the Rams are in now to where, there's still like a couple teams that I would kind of have above them in the NFC, but I mean, they're right there. They're right there in contention for a Super Bowl.
So that was going to be our next point. Before we move on to that, though, there was 2 other things I wanted to say. So first, Matthew Stafford shot up my Rams. Like he's one of the best all-time Rams quarterbacks already because he told the Lions that he would be fine with the trade to any team except for the Patriots. So the fact that he said that, you're already an all-time great Ram before you even play a snap. And then another thing that I thought was really interesting was the Rams did make a run at Aaron Rodgers. And then there was a report that they had already acknowledged that Deshaun Watson was going to be out of their price range. Like they didn't have a 2021 pick. And there was a lot of other things that went into that to where they knew they weren't getting Deshaun Watson. But
I mean,
man,
also too.
with how I'm feeling about Deshaun Watson, I can't imagine how I'd be feeling right now if the Rams had pulled off a trade for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's the ultimate like win now move.
Yeah. At
um,
that point, I'm
but
definitely calling for a Super Bowl. But
yeah, and then too, like I don't know if you guys know this. I know it's kind of been talked about a little bit in the past, but Clayton Kershaw and him are, are just
every
what's the over
every
under of every Rams game that like that's going to be
oh my
mentioned? How
god.
many elementary school photos of Matthew Stafford
Hey,
and Clayton
imagine
Kershaw are we
imagine if
mentioning?
fans get to come to the game and Kershaw's at the game.
Oh
Like
my god! Did you know these
like
guys were
the
friends?
over under of sideline shots of Kershaw watching the game is gonna have to be skyrocket high for people to take the under. Like, oh, it's so that's
They're
every
already drilling
journalist's
it into the
favorite.
ground. Like
Yeah,
the
like
moment that
why are we
trade
talking
announced, I
about
was
this
just like,
so
oh, here we
much?
go.
Who
Um,
cares? But so to your point, after the trade, the Rams moved up to the having the third highest odds to winning the Super Bowl 56. The Chiefs and the Packers were the only two teams now that have higher odds to win the Super Bowl to win Super Bowl 56. And then
yeah, but I
right
mean, it's also
behind,
that's kind of new. I think Vegas, like you're talking about next year, like that, but those odds are like literally brand like
yeah,
that's
no,
going to
that they
change
are, and there's
for
the
like
draft. The
after the
draft
off
still has,
season.
yeah, the draft has
Yeah,
to happen. Free agency has to happen. But
so we'll see what it looks like before
as
the
things
season.
stand, right now, you the Chiefs, Packers, Rams, and then Buccaneers, Ravens, and Bills were the so as you see things right now, where would you have the Rams in terms of
NFC
odds of winning the
squads.
Super Bowl? Yeah, and yeah, and NFC squads, right?
So I would probably say, I mean, are you wanting like actual betting odds or are you wanting like
No,
just
I just
like
want you to
my
tell me. I just want you to tell me who do you think is better in the NFC right
I
now
think
than the
well,
Rams?
I mean, right now, if I know Tom Brady's coming back next year,
Mhm.
I would still probably bet on the Buccaneers. I yeah, I'd still bet on the Packers. And I mean y'all's division too, like that's a tough, so tough. I think outside of, Cliff Kingsbury in that division, doing whatever he's doing there. You still have Seattle, and then if San Francisco gets healthy and they are able to secure a quarterback, whether that is Deshaun Watson, because we still don't know what's going to happen with that. Um, I mean, San Francisco, like you can't look at this year and say like this is San Francisco.
Yeah,
That's the
no, they
most
had
injured team that I've
so
ever
many
seen in my life,
injuries.
and they're
Yeah,
1 year removed from. Now, obviously, they don't have DeForest Buckner. Thank you, but
they still have a
it's
great defense though.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's still definitely a
Which I
top
mean,
five defense if they're healthy. But I mean, they could be losing some guys too. Sherman's a free agent. There's some other guys there
they
that
lost their defensive coordinator,
yeah.
so I mean,
Well,
we'll
I
see.
mean, so do the
See,
Rams too. So um,
and that's
there's a lot
that's
of
not to be
staff
taken
turnover.
lightly.
Your
Yeah,
cornerbacks coach, your basically anybody who's
everybody.
delivered Sean McVay takeout food for the last three
Yeah,
years is gone. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of turnover with the Rams as well. But so we'll see kind of what happens in the draft. But I would probably put y'all at right around like that third, fourth range as far as to come out of the NFC next year. Um, I don't know. I mean, if you are able to keep the same defense, obviously I would probably have you second behind the Packers. But we still don't know what's going to happen with the Packers. I mean, they just fired Mike Pettin. And
should be a positive
granted,
thing.
well, I mean, sort of. I mean, you look at it like that, and like you look at the playoffs, and you see kind of what happened and what transpired. But the Packers were also a top 10 scoring defense this year, and finding a coordinator to coordinate a top 10 scoring defense. I mean, those guys just don't grow on trees. So it's going to be interesting to see how they replace their defensive side of the ball as well. And, maybe they actually go, maybe for once they actually go out and fucking help Aaron Rodgers in the draft this year. Like
Yeah,
that
that
would
would be
be,
nice.
yeah, what a
But
concept.
I would love if they keep just drafting quarterbacks and running backs, but I doubt
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
well, yeah, I mean, we'll see, but there's a lot of questions still for me to look at it and say, this team is going to be better than this team. But I think right now I'd probably have y'all third, behind Tampa Bay and Green Bay, and then I think you're squarely in that mix, with like a healthy San Francisco. I think possibly, uh, if the Bears can get a quarterback, because Trubisky is a free agent. So depending on what the Bears do, if they are able to pull off a Watson trade, that's an extremely dangerous squad if they
Mm-hmm.
get a quarterback. Like, and that's without even mentioning, Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, like those teams in the AFC, those top three teams that I don't necessarily see any regression coming from those guys because those teams are still so young
Right.
anytime soon. So, I mean, anytime you're anytime you've basically got odds in the top 10 to win the Super Bowl, like you have a shot. Uh, so I think the Rams definitely have a shot if this does end up working out. I think there's just a handful of teams that I would pick above them if I was a better. But outside of that, I mean, I don't see any way that you can't be excited as a Rams fan, and I can't see any way that you're just not absolutely crushed as a Colts fan, because man, like now you're looking at like you're basically you're not getting Deshaun Watson. Bill O'Brien's not there. He's not. They're not
Yeah,
trading
the,
him in
the
the
Texans
division.
aren't trading the division. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you're not getting Watson. You're not getting Stafford. What are your other options? Like you look at it like maybe Carson Wentz, but I don't want him as a Colts fan, but I don't think they're going to move on from him either. All indications are they're going to try to rehabilitate that. Maybe Jalen Hurts becomes available. I wouldn't necessarily be against that. Um, so really, your only option Sam Darnold, maybe depending on what the Jets do. Like, are you really going to stake your claim on Sam Darnold?
Or my man,
Um,
famous Jameis, let him come in there and sling it. He's got
yeah,
20/20 vision now. He done got LASIK, man. He's ready to
like
go. Let him
yeah, I
sling
mean,
it.
the Jameis, I mean, I wouldn't hate it. Like it would be fun. I don't think we'd win anything, but it'd be a really cool 7-9 season. It'd be entertaining as shit. I think the clear path now for Indy is,
It's
you
got to
know,
be through the draft.
yeah, man, trade up, go get Justin Fields, man, go get Justin Fields. Let's see
Yeah,
what that's
that would
about.
be fun.
That would be very fun. I wouldn't be against that. I think Trey Lance is much more of a project than what I would be comfortable drafting to be our quarterback right now.
So much upside involved with him,
Yeah,
though.
there's so much upside. Yeah. I mean, if we had Rivers back for one more year, like I would be 100% be like, you get Trey Lance and let him sit behind Philip Rivers for a year and then just unleash him next season and see what happens. I don't necessarily think right now he's going to come in. Maybe you're able to swing a trade with the Jets. I mean, the Colts and Jets have made a lot of deals like the last few years. That's a very strong relationship there, even with different, coaches and stuff like that. I think the ownership, I mean, there's very strong ties there. So maybe you're able to swing a trade with the Jets, like and give up the next 15 first round picks, and you go up and get Zach Wilson possibly. I mean, who knows? There's just so many different avenues, but I think the clear avenue was Matt Stafford, and I think that's why so many Colts fans are bummed out right now because that was the clear, veteran guy that could come in and actually make a difference next season.
Right.
That there wasn't going to be as many question marks. I mean, there's question marks with every player, but there was the least amount of question marks with Stafford. So, um, you know, we'll see what happens. I trust Chris Ballard to do what he thinks is right. Apparently, the Colts didn't even offer their first round pick. They had um, a selection of picks and
Yeah, I saw
players.
that reporter from Sports
So
Illustrated that said that. Yeah.
yeah, so I
I was really
mean,
surprised to see that.
but see,
Um,
Chris Ballard is one of those guys that like he thinks first round picks are just absolute gold. I mean, he thinks, dude, Chris Ballard thinks fucking like sixth round picks are gold. So the fact that they, I was just shocked more than anybody last year they gave up a first to get DeForest Buckner. I mean, I was excited they did, and clearly it worked out. So I don't think by any means he's averse to doing that. But I think as far as like giving up multiple first round picks, unless he's 100% sure that the quarterback is in this draft and he can get him, and supposedly the only quarterback from what I've been reading, which I mean, you don't really trust, you know, you try not to trust what you read on Twitter and stuff like that, unless it comes from a couple guys like Schefter or somebody like that. But there's some beat writers for the Colts that are saying like the only quarterback that apparently the scouts have really been enamored with is Justin Fields. So I mean, maybe if he falls to 4 or 5, maybe you can move with Atlanta and give them some more picks to build around. whoever they're going to take. I mean, you don't know. There's just so many different avenues, but it's exciting time. I mean, it sucks being in this position because you have a win now roster, and you don't have the most important piece that you need to win, and that's that's literally the worst place you can be in because you're too good of a team to suck and get a good pick to get a quarterback, but you're
Right.
not good enough to win and consistently make the playoffs or compete for a Super Bowl.
Right.
And it's just, man, like as much as I'm glad Luck's healthy and happy and whatever, like that dude, like him, like he fucked us so hard. Like he set our franchise back for possibly years and years. But I mean, if if he announces his retirement before the draft and after the season instead of 2 weeks before the season starts, maybe we're able to draft a quarterback in that draft, and maybe we're able to pick up a free agent. Um, but he didn't. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I just, as much as I love Jacoby as a person, man, like I hope that's not where we're headed back. I hope we're not headed back to having
Yeah.
Jacoby and then Jacob Eason as our backup. Which I mean, I like Jacob. I think Jacob Eason's got a stronger arm than Matt Stafford. So I mean, I think according to Madden, whatever the fuck that means. I mean, I've seen the guy throw balls, obviously, but he's right there in like the top five strongest arms, you know, in the league. So I think Jacob Eason is right there with that Mahomes Josh. Obviously, he's not those two guys. Well, I mean, technically, we don't know. He could come in and just fucking annihilate people. You don't know. But that's the problem is you don't know. Like,
You're
so
probably not
that
gonna
like
find out.
yeah. So that's where I would say, like, if I was a Colts fan, man, like, which I am, but I'm saying, like, if I was, I I don't want Darnold. I don't want Wentz. I don't want these like fucking reclamation projects. Like, go out there, throw fucking Jacob Eason out there. If it hits, then we've got a quarterback. If it doesn't, then we know where we stand, and maybe we suck enough to lose some games to maybe we can actually draft one. So that's where I'm
Right.
at. I don't want to get into fucking purgatory. I don't want to get into this Jeff Fisher territory of going 7-9 every single year. Um, because at that point you're just wasting guys' careers. And
No, that's the way you're supposed to build teams, man. Keep your first round picks, go 7-9. That's what the Rams did for years. And that's let me tell you, man.
we still
I,
got to make the picks, man.
the Rams now are building a team like how I built a team on Madden, and I'm all the way here for that shit, man. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, but see, like this is what's fun though. Is like, so Kansas City's the exact opposite. Kansas City's got a lot of homegrown players. They hit on those draft picks.
Yeah,
They were a
they've done
quarterback away.
extremely
They
good in the
moved up to number
draft.
10. They got their guy, and look where they're at. And that's my dream for the Colts. Which of course our GM came from Kansas City. Whenever they were doing this, he's the guy that helped scout he sat down with Mahomes in Mahomes' living room and talked to. He's the guy that scouted the guy, and that's our
Right.
GM. So obviously he knows quarterback talent. He knows how to spot these guys. And there's let's see, maybe we've got a situation here where we're ready to roll. Other than I mean, obviously we need a couple pieces, but outside of that, we've got a really playoff ready roster. And maybe we move up. Maybe we pick up one of these guys. I'm full on team. I want Justin Fields, or I just want to see what the fuck we got at Eason, and that's where I'm at this point since we missed out on Stafford. Do not
So
bring back Jacoby unless he's like a locker room leader. If he's our backup,
right.
I'm excited about it. Like, I'm the guy's played like 30 something games. We know what he is.
So I mean the last thing to talk about really now to get back at the core of what we love so much whenever it comes to football is there was some fantasy fallout,
Fantasy,
uh from
fantasy.
from this uh from this Stafford and Jared Goff trade. So um whenever it comes to being Stafford being on the Rams, I mean I think obviously all of the Rams weapons have to get a bump fantasy wise.
Yeah,
Um
well, sort of. I think your receivers get a bump. I think your tight ends get a bump. I think Cam Akers gets more efficient, but I think they throw the ball more and it takes away opportunities from him. I don't know if he's going to run the rock as much as what you would think he will now that Stafford's there. I think they're going to throw a lot more than they did last year because I think McVay's finally going to be like, oh, we can pass.
I
So
I I dis I disagree, and I'll tell you why. McVay has always been kind of pass happy, where he has had a history of abandoning the run to throw the ball, even with Jared Goff. There might be a few more attempts with Stafford, but I don't think it's going to be dramatically more, because most Rams fans feel like we threw the ball too damn much the last couple of years anyway. And then another thing is, better quarterback, better offense should equal more red zone opportunities. And touchdowns are king whenever it comes to fantasy, and Akers should have plenty of opportunity to get those. So I think Kupp and Woods should both be considered top 20 receivers, and Cam Akers is an RB1 for me. He's a top 12
Yeah.
running
Well,
back.
yeah, he was a top. Yeah, he was. That's what I'm saying. Like, I
Um,
think his efficiency goes up. As far as like, I think he scores more touchdowns. I think he obviously gets more opportunity this year than he did last year.
right.
So I mean, I think he's an RB1, but I
I
don't think
think
it's
Cam Akers, I
necessarily
mean,
going to be.
we'll see how it affects his ADP, but I think Akers could possibly end up being a value in the draft, because in my opinion,
Yeah, I think you can get him in
I
the
think he's
second,
going to
third
be,
round.
yeah, I think he's going to be a top 12 running back, and I don't think he's going to go where top 12 running backs would normally go. So, and then the only thing that I'm not sure on, is going to be interesting to see, that this kind of applies to both Detroit and the Rams. Um, it's going to be, we're going to find out now if tight ends having low volume has to do with McVay's scheme or with Goff tendencies, because I don't know which one it is, but the tight end, the Rams have had talented tight ends with Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett, and they just don't get passing volume in the offense. And I mean, granted, Gerald Everett is a free agent who isn't expected to return because of Tyler Higbee, and then they drafted another guy, Bryson Hopkins, in the draft last year. So Higbee should get more snaps just off of the fact that Gerald Everett isn't there anymore, and should have more touchdown opportunities, because they should be in the red zone more often. But I don't know if it's McVay's scheme, or if Goff just didn't really like throwing to tight ends that much. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. That's kind of my question mark with Tyler Higbee. But regardless, he should still get a bump, because his touchdown
Yeah.
opportunity just went up, and the fact that the tight end position is just scarce for fantasy talent as far as that goes. So, and then I think Stafford is in the quarterback one the discussion for fantasy. I don't think he's top 3 or anything like that, but I think Stafford should be drafted in that
Uh,
like
I
quarterback 7 to 10 range.
see that's a little too high for me. Because you do have quarterbacks that are mobile that can possibly put up more points than he is.
And
I
they're
think
all
I
above him in
think
that
I think
conversation.
yeah. See, I think he's in a high end quarterback 2 range for me. I don't think he's going to be a 1 every week. Now, is he going to have weeks that he is a 1? Yes. I mean,
Well, I mean,
unfortunately.
most guys that are backing quarterback ones aren't quarterback ones every single week on a
Well, yeah,
weekly
I know, but I'm
basis.
saying like consistently, I think he's more in my high end quarterback 2, low end 1 range. I've got him kind of in that. Well, depending on what size league you're in, but in a 12-team league, I've probably got him in that 10 to 15 range, on a
Yeah,
consistent basis.
he's like 7 to 10. I mean, you've got like the
I don't
mobile
think he's just.
quarterbacks I have
I
ahead of
mean, the
him.
guy's thrown 32 touchdowns once in his career. I don't. Like I said, I mean, you could.
That's the one thing about this whole deal that has really, I don't understand, is why people keep bringing up. Granted, I know past performance has something to do with it,
Yeah,
but
well, that's what I'm saying is you
he's
can't put
played
it
in a
all.
worse
You
he's
can't
played in
put
a
it all.
worse.
You can't put it all on the line. Dude, he's been in the league 12 years. Like at some point, regardless of situation, you've got to show that you can do. Like regardless of the team you're on.
That sounds really
Like
weird coming from a guy who talks about situation as everything whenever you talk about
yeah,
quarterbacks.
as far as drafting a quarterback to get him in the perfect situation, I do agree. But after you've been in the league 12 years, like we know at that point, like what your limitations are as a quarterback. Obviously, the dude's got a top 5 arm in the league. Obviously, the guy can come out and sling it, from different angles, and he's like super talented, and he can make those he makes those. You watch him, and there's 5 throws every game that Matthew Stafford makes, and you're just like, holy fuck! Like, how is that even possible? It's not those 5 throws I'm worried about. It's the other 30. And he's shown like there's been dudes that have been like because I watched a lot of Lions games this year due to having TJ Hawkinson. I tuned into a lot of Lions games and they had some wide open guys that he just straight missed. I mean, like so he's not just
Which
gonna
every non-top 5 quarterback does, but
well
keep going.
yeah, I get it, dude. And I'm like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm I get it. Like you're excited. I'd be the same way if he came to the Colts. I'd be
And
super
that was
excited
going to be my
about it.
next point, as I've never
Yeah.
even heard you say a bad word about Matthew
I'm not
Stafford
saying,
until the Colts
well,
didn't
see,
trade for
no,
him.
I'm not saying anything bad about him. I just don't think he's going to come in. If he was with the Colts, I think he's still going to be in that 10 to 15 range. I
Well, yeah,
might actually put him.
y'all's weapons aren't as good as
Yeah,
ours, so
that's what I'm saying.
that's
I was going
fair.
to say I might actually put him a little lower than that just because we don't have Cup and, Woods and stuff. I might put him in that, 15, 17
But I mean,
range.
you've got Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen, you've got Lamar, you've got Deshaun Watson, you've got Kyler Murray, you've got Brady, assuming he returns. Those six off the top of my head. Um, I mean, after those six quarterbacks, I'm sure I'm missing. Like I said,
Let's
seven
just,
to
let's
ten.
just okay. So let's just look here.
I said 7 to 10 range, and I'm at six right now.
Yeah. So here you
So
got
I
Russell
mean,
Wilson. You didn't touch on Russell Wilson.
I don't love Russell Wilson for fantasy unless they change their mindset of how they do things, which according to Pete Carroll, they're not. They want to run the ball more. But Russell Wilson is just as far
Well, he's an enigma. And
he's
I
a
think,
great NFL quarterback, but fantasy wise, he is very boom bust to where
and
he
that's
for
where I
like
think Stafford's going to end up. I
I
think
think I think
Stafford's going to end
Stafford
up
would
in
be
that
more
Russell Wilson
consistent.
range.
Which is fine. That's seven to me. That's 7 to 10. I would have him and Russell Wilson in the same tier, but I think that McVay's tendency to get away from the run and Pete Carroll's tendency to run the ball too much, I would have him in front of Russ for fantasy. I think Russ is a better NFL quarterback, but fantasy wise, I would have Stafford over Russ now. Um, but I mean, like just off the top of my head, once you get past Mahomes and Josh Allen and
All right,
Lamar
so
and
here we go.
Kyler.
Here we go. So these are the top quarterbacks right here. Justin Herbert, you didn't touch on. Um,
I
so
think they're
these,
in the same tier.
this is where you're looking at. So Josh Allen was QB1. You got Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Watson, Wilson, Ryan Tannehill. Um,
I would rather have Stafford.
I would rather have Tannehill, honestly. I think in a fantasy format, I would rather have Tannehill, and that sounds so fucking weird to say, but
Okay.
and then Brady, Herbert, Lamar was 10. Kirk Cousins, Ryan, Carr, Roethlisberger,
Yeah,
and
now
then
you're getting
Stafford.
way down
Yeah,
to where
yeah.
I don't.
Now you got Stafford in that 15
He was
range.
quarterback 15 in the situation he was in last year.
Yeah, and
7 to 10 is not that crazy of a jump.
no, I don't think it is, and that's what I'm saying. Like I've got for me, I think he's in that high end two, like low end one. I think he's going to be right there in that to 10 to 15 range. I don't
Hmm.
think he's going to come in and make this jump to where he's outscoring. Lamar Jackson was quarterback 10. I mean, if they get another weapon there, you're putting him in the top six like
Yeah,
easily.
well, I already had him, and I had him over
Yeah, so I
Stafford
mean,
anyway.
you got Allen, Murray, Rodgers, Mahomes, Watson, Lamar, Brady. That's seven right there.
Yeah,
You're taking
right,
all
right
those
there,
guys over
right
him.
there is. I would put Stafford right there with Brady.
Yeah,
That's where I
and
start to
then
draw the
yeah,
line.
and then that's kind of where I'm putting him in is in Russell Wilson, Tannehill, Herbert, Stafford, maybe Kirk Cousins range, and like
Nah,
yeah,
Kirk's
I'm
in a
not talking
different
about
tier
real
for
life.
me.
I'm talking about fantasy.
No, I
Kirk
know.
Cousins is a
I
good
know.
fantasy quarterback. So if people
He's
listen to this, they're
okay.
like Kirk Cousins. You're saying Kirk Cousins is as good as Matt Stafford? No, I'm not. Last year, fantasy wise, he was. Kirk Cousins scored 319 points last year as a fantasy quarterback. He was quarterback number 11. He was a quarterback one on the year. I don't think, and he's got those weapons are still going to be there. He's
Hmm.
still got Dalvin Cook. Justin Jefferson's only going to get better.
Hmm.
I mean, Thielen is there. They've got a plethora of weapons. So I'm not saying he's going to be better, but that's what I'm saying. I think I'm ranking all those guys. They can all overtake each other any given week.
Yeah, I mean
That's kind of
that's what you
where
get to
that's
whenever you get
that's
to the
kind of
back
where
end quarterback
yeah,
ones.
yeah. So I mean, I think that's for me. That's where I would rank him is in that group with that. That's basically kind of like a tier three guy
Yeah,
for
there
me.
were a few guys that you named that I wouldn't have in there. Like I would have Mahomes, I would have Josh Allen, I would have Lamar, I would have Kyler, I would have Rodgers, um, and Deshaun Watson. I would have those six for sure ahead of him.
Brady,
Brady, I think that's where you start getting into the same tier. I think that just for fantasy wise, I think that Brady, Stafford, Tannehill, Herbert. I think that's the next tier right there.
Yeah, that's that
Um,
quarter. That's that three tier for me because I think clearly
and I think that
you've
Stafford
got
is in the front of
Deshaun.
that, which would put him at quarterback 7 or 8, like depending on where you got. I think the line is Brady and Stafford, and that would be quarterback 7 or 8 based off the guys we're listing. And so, I mean, the quarterback 7 to 10 range is where I would put him, and I think he's at the front end of that basically after
See,
this, after
and
this
and
move.
man, like if you look like I'm like I know like you do really get into the advanced stats and stuff. And I almost brought this point up earlier. The best case for Matthew Stafford this year, the absolute best case, is what Ryan Tannehill is doing down in Tennessee. If you can have a season like Tannehill's had the last couple of years, that's the best case for the Rams and the best case for Stafford.
I, I think he has the ability, and especially with McVay's tendencies, I think he can put up
Well, I think his talent's
higher
better than Tannehill.
numbers. Well,
But
and
I
I
don't
think he can
know.
put up more numbers too because Tennessee, I mean, Derrick Henry, he's going to get another 400 carries or whatever, and Akers is going to get plenty of carries, and
Yeah,
Henderson is
and
too. But
but
like
that
I've
kind of
already
like
talked about, McVay loves to just abandon the run randomly all year long. He's done it for the last several years to where there's games where like that's been really like my only complaint with McVay as a Rams fan is um, is that is this he abandons the run at times. So
yeah,
that's really my been only
this is the
complaint.
ultimate test of like does situation honestly matter? So golf is going to go to Detroit, which I mean I don't think anybody's picking Detroit to do much of anything next year. They're clearly in a rebuild, so I mean we know what's going to happen there. I mean he might play a couple games really well, but I don't think we're looking at that. But are we like was it the Detroit Lions for 12 years? Was the Detroit or were the Detroit Lions the main factor in Stafford not being able to compete? And we're not talking about he's putting up big numbers because you can look at Deshaun Watson this year. Like Matt Stafford's had 1 year where he's thrown, and that was what his second, third year in the league. He threw those 41 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And outside of that, he's thrown 32 touchdowns once, and then every other time he's been in the 20s. And Deshaun Watson played on an absolute shit roster, and they lost a bunch of games, and he still put up massive numbers. He was still a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. Matt Stafford's not shown that he can do that. So I can't just take it into account like, well, it's his roster that's causing it because we've seen guys that are uber talented
Hmm.
have shitty rosters and put up massive number. Like we've seen that happen.
Hmm.
And we've seen it happen for more than one season. I haven't seen Stafford do that for more than one season. So I'm not ready to anoint him, you know, in this. And this is with him being in the Ram. I would have hated like his fantasy. I think in general, like the Colts, unless you've got a Colts running back because they really do like to run the ball, um, they're they're very difficult for fantasy because Frank just uses so many different guys. Like there's I wouldn't have liked Stafford for fantasy purposes if he did go to the Colts. And so there's only one guy that was able to overcome that, and that was Andrew Luck. And I don't think anybody's getting that confused you know for
Yeah, he's
anything
not
like
your
that.
normal everyday quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's what we're excited about. I'm ready to see like this is the ultimate test of like was it the Lions that made Stafford not that good for all those years, or do we have a Ryan Tannehill scenario here where he gets out of Miami, he goes to a better roster, his efficiency just spikes up, and they start winning a bunch of games.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
this is no excuses for Stafford anymore, and really, this is no excuses for McVay in the front
yeah,
office as
and
well. I mean,
I think Stafford too. Like I don't think he's going to necessarily be concerned. I think he's going to be more efficient. I think that's his goal. Like they're going to be more efficient. They're going to put more points on the board. They're going to try to score more, red zone opportunities, kind of like Tennessee does. I think they want to be that. Obviously, they're going to be a step above that um, because I think McVay is obviously a better coach. And then they lost their offensive coordinator in Tennessee. He's down in Atlanta now, so we'll see what Rabel does there. Um, but I think they've got more talent on their offense than Tennessee does. But I think they want to be multiple, and I think McVay wants to attack that deep, those. deep crossers in the field and have those. I think the only thing they really lack, and this, maybe Van Jefferson takes off there, but I think they really do lack a deep threat, like an actual, like, a guy that can take the top off the defense. I think they're definitely situated to attack the middle of the field. So so now that we kind of get into the Rams perspective of fantasy, let's get into the Lions perspective, because you go from Stafford to Goff. Um, I think DeAndre Swift takes a bump, as far as, like, he's basically going to have to carry that offense. I think, and so I think his workload is just going to be absolutely insane, and with the workload is opportunity. Like, I'll always take workload over talent. You might have guys that are more talented, like James Robinson's a perfect example of this. This last year, James Robinson, obviously he's not as talented as Akers or Swift or some of these other guys, but the dude's getting 30 fucking touches a game.
Right.
So if you combine those 30 touches with somebody that is as talented as Swift, who, I mean, they might not have, the best roster in the NFL, but the opportunity and talent are there for him to, just go nuclear. I think every other option there, obviously Kenny Galladay, we'll see what happens there. They can still franchise tag him. But who knows what's going to happen with that. If Galladay does leave,
Got Marvin Jones that could be a free that's a free agent as well too.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, you
I
might,
think even Marvin Hall too.
yeah,
I
he's a
mean,
free agent as
like,
well. So I mean, yeah, they could lose their pass catchers, pretty much, like, and that's where I don't know. I'm so kind of torn with this Hawkinson rating, because I love the Hawkinson as a tight end, like as a talent. I think he's
mhm.
probably, outside of Kittle and Kelsey and Waller, I think he's firmly at the top of that next level of guys as far as
Yeah,
talent goes.
him and Mark Andrews are right
Yeah,
there together,
yeah,
I think.
right there. So I mean, you don't really know how that's going to play out, because is Golf, like you said, like, are we going to see him basically ignore the position? But that might be the only position that he has
Yeah.
any
I don't
talent to
think he's
throw
gonna be
to.
able to, even if he
Yeah,
wants to.
yeah. So I mean, do you downgrade Hawkinson or do you upgrade him? Well, I mean, we'll see how the offseason plays out.
Even with me not liking Jared Goff, and even we don't know if it's McVay's scheme or if it's Goff's tendencies that leads to tight ends getting low volume. But just like, I mean, surely they've got to add somebody, whether it's free agency or the draft. They've got to add pass catchers. But I mean, even then, at that point, are they guys that are better than Hawkinson? So I mean, I think just off the fact of the amount of targets he should see, just based off of pure necessity, and the fact that tight end, there's the least amount of options there in fantasy. I think he gets a bump up, but I think Swift, like you, for the
I
reasons
hope
you
I hope
mentioned,
you're right, because I've got shares of both those guys,
right? And
in
I
multiple
think
leagues.
I
So
think Swift gets I think Swift gets a bump up. If they do bring in a wide receiver in free agency, we'd have to talk about that. If they draft a wide receiver, I'm probably not going to want anything to do with them in year one,
no,
as far as fantasy goes. And there's no way I'm touching Golf in a one quarterback league, and I
no,
wouldn't even in a two quarterback league.
no.
I
He
would
would,
I
yeah,
would
he
be
would be he
drafting
would
my
be a
second
stream.
quarterback before then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a streaming matchup guy.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, Swift and Hawkinson should be fine. Swift, I think, should be more than fine, but Hawkinson, I think he should be fine, and with possible upside if it was just McVay's scheme and Goff ends up targeting the tight end. I mean, Hawkinson should get plenty of targets that way. So, um, we'll see what they do at
Yeah,
receiver. But
but outside of those two guys, and those are the only two guys that honestly, like, you want to own on Detroit, depending on what happens with Galladay and all that stuff. But I think even if you do get Galladay, obviously their wide receivers take a bump down. I think all their other options outside of Swift and Hawkinson, you gotta decrease them. So we'll see what happens. There's still a lot that can play out. We're not even through this season yet, so I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in the draft. I mean, hell, they could go out and draft Justin Fields and have a Russell Wilson, Chase Daniel, thing where they signed, or oh no, it wasn't. It was Matt Flynn. Where Seattle, they signed Matt Flynn to this huge contract to come and be their quarterback, and
yeah,
they
then
go out and
drafted
they
Russ,
draft a
and yeah,
quarterback, and then they end up battling it out in camp, and the draft pick wins it out. So we don't know if Jared Goff's even going to be a starter there.
Yeah.
So who knows what they're going to do? It's it's exciting times, man. There's so much to talk about, and I definitely can't wait
The
because we've got
last thing to hit on, man, is we normally record these on Monday nights, but our next podcast we're going to record on a Friday night, pre Super Bowl podcast. We're gonna hopefully try to get as many people as possible that we
yeah, I was
have
gonna say,
talked football with
I know
over
we
the
got two or
years.
three guys already lined up,
Right.
to appear, and
So
we're gonna have a really good time with it, and there's gonna be some special stuff that we're gonna hit on for you guys. And man, with some of these
it's
guys
just
that are
going to
coming
be
on
a
here,
just going to
it's
be a Super Bowl pod, man. Talk
yeah,
about, we haven't, up to this point, we haven't talked Super Bowl predictions or anything yet. We're going to save it off for that. So
yeah,
record
and
that
like I
on
said, some
Friday
of these
night.
guys we're having on here, very opinionated,
A lot of fun to
very
talk
yeah, a
sports with.
lot of fun, a lot of fun. It's going to be so exciting. I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. So hope you guys enjoyed this. You know,
Don't
can't wait for
forget to
April.
go check us out on Spotify. Go check us out on Apple, and go to the YouTube channel. Like this video if you like the video. Subscribe
Yes.
to the channel. Hit that little bell to turn notifications on so you get notified whenever the next video comes up. And if you've made it this far, you definitely need to let us know who you are so that you can join us for the Friday episode. Because if you're a real one if you made it this deep into this podcast. So
Right.
let us
And
know
then
who you are.
also I want to give a shout out to DJ Ray, who, if you're listening to this, you listen to our opening. He made us a custom intro for our podcast to have. So definitely check that guy out on YouTube. It's DJ Ray, Ray. And then for any inquiries, you could email him or contact him on YouTube. If you've got any music that you need being made, the guy's extremely talented, super great guy to work with. So I want to give him a special thanks and a special shout out.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, all right, guys. Well, we will see you guys on a special episode coming out this Saturday, or well, I guess it might be Friday night.
Friday night,
Well,
Saturday
yeah,
morning at the
Friday night,
latest.
Saturday
Yeah.
morning. So, we'll end it here, and thank you guys so much for listening.